Okay. Well, a very warm welcome to everybody who's joined us this evening. Unfortunately, Derek is busy in Westminster. As you may have noticed, there's quite a lot going on there at the moment. So we'll carry on without him, and he'll have to watch the recording afterwards to catch up with what we've been up to. But it's my very great pleasure to introduce Sarah Jordan from Hope for the Future. And I think we first met in 2016 when I did my climate ambassador training, and there were about 3 people in the Hope for the Future, or maybe just you and Joe, I'm not sure. But it's been absolutely inspirational to watch the organisation grow to become a national organisation supporting people in talking to their MPs, engaging with their MPs in the long term to make them recognise the importance of action on climate change. So, Sarah, we look forward to hearing you.
Great, thanks Pippa. Thank you for the introduction. And yeah, it's great to be here and to speak to you all. I think today's session is about education and education for climate action. And yeah, as Pippa says, at Hope for the Future, we I suppose educate, we offer training and support in how people can speak to their politicians about climate change. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. As Pippa says, I'm Sarah, and I've been involved in Hope for the Future for many years now. I think it's been about 7 or 8 years, and yeah, we have grown as an organisation quite a lot during that time, but it's been a joy and a privilege to work with Pippa and others at the WI down in Cornwall with Derek Thomas, and we've been doing that for a few years now, and it's been really exciting to see that kind of relationship grow, and to see all the amazing work that you're doing in collaboration together. So yeah, it's been great to be part of that, and to see that happening. So as I say, Hope for the Future are here to educate people in how to communicate climate change. And I think it's important to think about climate change itself and think about the fact that it's actually quite a difficult topic to think about and to really kind of get your head around and understand. And I think people who have been working in climate change and in the climate movement for many years now, even decades, have sometimes felt like they've been banging their heads against a wall a little bit, and kind of saying, you know, we know this thing is happening, why are people not listening? And it's actually, if you really think about it, it can make sense. And there's a brilliant book by someone called George Marshall, that some of you might have read or heard of, and it's called Why Our Brains Are Wired to Ignore Climate Change. And it's basically about how climate change is such a huge kind of abstract concept. And actually, our brains are wired to respond to immediate threats. So, you know, say a evolutionary, thinking back many years ago, a lion jumps out at us, our bodies and our brains know how to respond to that threat. You know, we run away, or, you know, try and fight back, or whatever it might be. But with something so kind of slow moving and abstract, and what has been thought of as kind of a future problem, it's hard to sustain that engagement and sustain that action on something of that nature. So it's just really important to understand that, so that when you're communicating with people, you can try and adapt the language you're using, or speaking to people's values, or the things that kind of feel a bit more concrete, and really breaking it down into something that people can understand and really grasp. And at Hope for the Future, when we're thinking about speaking to politicians, we always talk about building bridges. and speaking to people's values and finding common ground, which is a really key part of our approach, and what we have seen to work really well when people are seeking to engage with politicians, and obviously calling that on them to take greater action on climate change. So our training is all about how to engage with our democratic process on climate change to make change, and as I say, specifically on how to work with MPs and councillors, and we've been doing a lot more work with councillors in more recent years. So in the beginning, when we were first kind of looking into this and realising that there wasn't really any training or support in how to do this well, we noticed that people quite often went into meetings with politicians and took quite an adversarial approach. And you can understand it really, a lot of the time in the media, we see that kind of adversarial communication when it's anything to do with politics. So if you've ever seen PMQs or interviews of politicians by Jeremy Paxman or anything like that, it's usually quite adversarial and argumentative. And we found that was kind of being played out in these meetings that we were seeing with constituents. But actually that leads to relationship breakdown, and it doesn't build trust, and it doesn't build a relationship, which is what you need in order to work well together and to influence change as well. So we draw on an approach called nonviolent communication, which was originally thought up by someone called Marshall Rosenberg. And essentially nonviolent communication is about seeking to understand another person's needs and motivations in order to avoid conflict. And so we try to help people to understand what it's like to be an MP or to be a politician, because a lot of people just kind of don't really have an awareness of what it's like. So MPs have really high pressured jobs, and if Derek was here, I'm sure he would attest to that. And I suppose even the fact that he's not here is probably quite a good example of that. But they get hundreds of emails into their inboxes every day, and yeah, I'm sure Beth would would be able to attest to that as well. They have to travel to Westminster, every week from Monday to Thursday, probably catching the earliest train on Monday and the latest train on the Thursday, working crazy hours during those days, attending debates, meetings, events, votes. And then on Fridays and Saturdays, they've got the kind of constituency thing and meeting their constituents, and again attending events and meetings, and then they've got the Sunday to try and fit in the family thing. Although I did actually meet an MP, Olivia Blake, who's a Sheffield MP, who said she had work on Sundays, and I said, I thought Sundays was your day off, and she was like, whoever told you that was lying. So they've even got Sunday work to do as well. So yeah, they're just incredibly busy, high pressured jobs that they've got to do. They're usually generalists, so they've got to know about so many different issues, and if they've got a day of constituent meetings, they might be meeting one person who's talking to them about their immigration status, the next person's talking to them about potholes in the area, and then the next person's coming in to ask them about climate change. So unless they're a minister or they've got a specific portfolio about something, it's unlikely that they're going to have a very in-depth knowledge or a personal interest. As I say, they just have to know about so many kind of different issues, a little bit of lots of different issues. Generally, they also MPs have a very local focus. So if you're going in to speak to them about climate change, which is obviously a global issue, they might be sitting there thinking, well, what's this got to do with my constituency that I'm here to represent? So grounding it in the local can really help. And it's also important to think about what's actually within their power to do. And this is, where working with councils and things comes in as well, because, there are certain things responsibilities that belong to a council or to a metro mayor or a devolved administration if you're in Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland, and there's other things that sit with an MP. So it's helpful at least to have an awareness of that, so you're not going into a meeting and asking a politician to do something that actually they don't have responsibility for or don't have the power to make change in that area. So we found that giving constituents an understanding of some of these things was helpful in creating a more understanding dynamic, and that led to more productive conversations about climate change, and helping campaigners to understand their own unmet needs was also really helpful in reducing their own kind of defensive behaviours. So, for example, if you were going into a meeting with an MP or a councillor tomorrow, you might be feeling nervous or powerless, and that might make you behave in certain ways that don't lead to a productive conversation. So yeah, it's helpful to just be aware of those things as well. And as I said earlier, the most important aspect of our approach at Hope for the Future is that finding common ground. And in your case, Derek is obviously really supportive of climate action, so that's fantastic, and you've already got that large area of common ground with him, but with other MPs or other politicians, they might not have that interest and that motivation to act. And an example I have of that was an MP we worked with called Philip Davies, who he was one of the 5 MPs who voted against the Climate Change Act, but his constituents really wanted to work with him on climate change. So they were saying, how are we going to do this? So in the end, we found that actually he was a real kind of local hero, and he'd grown up in the local area and was just really there to kind of represent his constituents, and that was his main motivation as an MP. And we found that he had quite high levels of fuel poverty in the area, so we decided to work with the group to engage him on that and talk about housing efficiency and insulation standards, and that worked really well. So if, as I say, maybe not in this room, but for other people, or even communicating not just to politicians but anyone, you're working with speaking to someone who's got no interest in climate change, it's such a multifaceted issue that there'll be something that you could speak to them about, whether that is improving health through active travel or improving insulation to reduce the fuel costs. And I suppose with the cost of living crisis that we're dealing with at the moment, and the energy and food crises, that is a huge one to be thinking about at the moment. And it's just really important as well to get that balance. So I've talked quite a lot about the kind of relationship side of things, but it's also really important that you've got a goal that you want to achieve. So it's a balance of making sure you're not so relationship focused in a meeting or a conversation that you're sort of treading on eggshells, but not so goal focused that you don't build that relationship and you just kind of come in really hard-handed. So it's the balance between the two. And at Hope for the Future, we help people to write asks that they might want to ask their MP or other politician, and we use SMART asks. So you might have heard of specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound, as a way to form what you can ask your MP to do, what is within their power, and they'll feel motivated to do in a way that's actually really helpful for them to think, oh yeah, no, that is something that I could do. And we help constituents to come up with what those things might be. So I don't want to talk on too long because I think I had about 10 minutes, but I suppose just to finish up, these are such uncertain times with the leadership election and the upcoming general election, whenever that's going to be, could still be a couple of years away, but it'll come around soon. And all of this is amongst several crises, which I've mentioned already: the cost of living, the food and energy crises. But climate change intersects all of those things and all of those crises, and as do many of the solutions. And it's just really important that we work with our politicians and that we give them the mandate to take action locally and in Parliament. So hopefully Future is here to educate everyday people in how to do that in an effective and constructive way that leads to change. So yes, thank you for listening. I'll hand back to Pippa.
Thank you so much. That was great. Well, John Howe, who is incidentally Mayor of Penzance, you may not know that, is going to introduce Lewis Groom, who is going to talk about the other end of the spectrum. John.
Okay, thank you, Pippa. I'm very, very happy to introduce Lewis. He's a teacher at Marazion School. He's got years of experience teaching children about climate issues and is passionate about the need for a quality national climate education. And I know that he's very keen to emphasize that it's not just him as one teacher within the school, it's the school as a whole. So over to you, Lewis.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said that to you before, didn't I? It's a whole team effort here, and we're really lucky with everybody we've got involved. So it is more about the team. My name's Lewis Groom. I've been a teacher here for several years, and sort of the environmental lead, I guess. I know really tight for time, so I will try and keep it concise to tell you about what we do in our little school by the sea. I must apologise. I'm a talker, so I've had to put everything on paper because with 10 minutes, you just won't get any information out of me or talk because I'm passionate about it. So we'll be looking down a little bit, but I apologise for that. But firstly, I think you need to know a little bit more about us and what drives us as a school. I would say we're a values-based school, and we have an ethos and motto of living, laughing and learning. We really believe in offering children a diverse curriculum that broadens horizons and offers aspirations. We know that all our children can achieve. And we're never afraid of being the role models that they might need. And we're so proud to base what we do in love for those children. We're also extremely lucky where we are. I mean, my classroom I'm stood in now literally overlooks St. Michael's Mount. It's really beautiful. But we have easy access to beaches, coastal paths and woodlands. And it's really key to our curriculum that children understand, respect and protect these areas. And this can't simply be achieved by sitting in a classroom discussing them. We like to get them out as much as possible in meaningful ways to support knowledge growth. In our planning, we have to, we think about outdoor learning opportunities continuously, and not just in a tokenistic way. It's every week of the year, how we can get children outside the classroom. And that might just be doing maths outside the classroom in our woodland area, all the way through to residentials. Before my time at the school started on an ethos change, thinking about sustainability. And we introduced reusable water bottles as part of the school uniform. If we're on residential visits, we turn down like plastic cartons of drinks. Sorry, I'm losing where I am now. And we also work with our suppliers, so like the canteen, making sure we have meat-free days in school, and where we can get local produce where possible. In a nutshell, that's sort of us and the ethos. We have a topic-based learning approach, and we have 3 topics across the whole year that follow the 3 terms, and we pay special attention to making these as immersive as we can and to thread or weave environmental learning into all we do. We hope that this creates really rich experiences for the children and starts to create deeper and embedded learning across all different topics. Over the 3 terms, we have what we call Marazion Book Days. So we don't just do one singular World Book Day with Marazion Book Days. Super Learning Days, launches and outcomes. They're all special events within our school. These could normally be a full day event where the whole school is learning all around one topic, or they could be class and topic based depending on what the children are learning. As an example, our last Super Learning Day was all about the environment, our impact on the environment, and how we could try and halt or reverse some of the damage that humans do. Also, our last Marathon Book Day was all on non-fiction texts. Again, there was a focus in this of bees and nature and understanding our planet. Our topic outcomes have included many things over the years, but most recently we've had a pollination party and raising money to keep developing our woodland area to support nature, where the children are foraging and then cooking on an outdoor fire. I think this is the weaving process, and we believe education about climate. We believe in education about climate and empowering the children to be able to talk freely about the world around them and to make sure that their voice is heard and that they can talk about the changes they want to see. Being able to make their voice heard is one of the biggest parts of Marazion School's vision statement, and we work hard every year on making this better. I think it's probably fair to say that everybody has different views on climate change, the environment, how we should fix it, how involved government should be, and what priorities should be. But I think we're truly lucky with the team we have at Marazion School, from the governors to senior leadership to the teaching staff to the TAs. Everybody is dedicated, hardworking, and they just buy into the ethos of the school. I think we've all got a really can-do attitude, and we give everything the best shot we can in the belief that what we're doing is in the best interest of our children. We've invested financially and in time working with organisations such as Eden Project to further our knowledge around the climate issue or subject, and to try and weave this into outcomes and general learning across the curriculum. We've been doing beach school for a number of years, and we do this really well. But in the last couple of years, we started building the Marazion woodland area. And many of the staff have gone on training for outdoor leaders, and we share all of this knowledge with the rest of our staff so that all the children can benefit from it, no matter what class they're in. Currently, we have children in Key Stage 2 that are safely making and using fires, whittling, cooking, foraging, gardening, using tools, drilling, sawing and cleaning. And all of this just feeds into understanding the environment and how important it is. We've also got many wonderful people that live in our community and we work with, and some of these people, these marvelous people, are so willing to share their knowledge and expertise. And they've worked in environmental protection, renewables, and their passion really rubs off on the children and on us. We also try and offer our children as many opportunities as possible. We were one of the first 3 schools, I believe, in the country to become plastic free. We run eco clubs throughout the year, and we take part in projects like School Full Seasons project we've been involved in recently, which is all about pupil wellbeing coming out of the COVID crisis and getting back into nature, as well as 7 songs for G7. So the children actually recorded and released a song that was part of that project that coincided with the G7 event. This all goes back to them knowing that they have a voice, how to use it, and believing that that voice has real power. If children are passionate about something, we're passionate about them exploring it, and we always try to educate ourselves on the subject to further their knowledge, thus allowing them to make that voice a bit louder with every new nugget of information they get, because we believe knowledge is power. I think you can probably tell I consider myself really, really lucky to work at Marazion School. I absolutely love it, and that's why I've had to keep to this script, because I would have completely gone off on many tangents by now. But what we offer the children here is what I passionately believe education should look like. And a couple of things really stuck with me really early on in my career. When I was training, I really vividly remember being told, find a school that has the same values as you, because when you do, magical things will happen. And our head, Jenny Rainbow, who's here tonight, she said to me in my induction, education is the easiest job in the world to have professional conversations in, because you always start with a question, is what we're doing in the best interest of the children? And both of those things have really stayed with me. Going back to what Sarah was saying, values are key to decision making, and I think values always should be. And is what we're doing in the best interest of the children we serve? And with that in mind, I'd like to pose a question, I suppose, to everybody. Are all schools doing the best for their children in terms of understanding this global issue? And that question came to me a couple of years ago. We had, so I teach in year 4 and 5, I should have said that at the beginning, sorry. We had a boy come and join us in year 5 a couple of years ago, and we do pupil conferencing at the end of the year. So it's all about pupil voice again, and it could be seeing how we're doing as a school, understanding maybe guided reading, assemblies, assessment, etc. This was on the environment and how that's embedded within topic. And this new year 5 boy said to me, "Mr. Groom, before I came into your class, I didn't even know that climate change was a thing. My old school never spoke about it, but I'm really glad I know now." And that, it scared me. How can I'm going off on a tangent now. How can our children be out on picket lines and engaging communities, go into conferences? How can they be doing that? And other schools don't even mention climate change. It baffled me. And I think from that, I would argue, why are we testing children to see if they can answer a multiplication question in 6 seconds, or how to embed a clause, when in their lifetimes, they've got the potential to be witnessing mass migration, famine, and droughts? And going back to that question I wanted to ask, are we really setting our children up for the best future possible? I know that the government's released a policy paper in April this year on sustainability and climate change, but are we going fast enough and far enough? From attending these meetings over the time we've had them, a question always seems to come out at the end of them, which is, how do we engage the wider public and make them want to make changes? And to me, the answer has always seemed fairly simple, and that's teach their children. If you teach people's children, their grandchildren, their cousins, their nieces and nephews, that will get people talking about it. It'll get people talking about it more over the dinner table, and that engages communities that are harder to reach. It just seems simple to me. Perhaps I'm wrong, but again, I would say knowledge is power, and it's the power to do better. And if you empower those children, they can have those conversations and alleviate those worries they might have. Of course, I accept the policy paper is there trying to do its best, but I think a lot of it relies on key staff, as long as people don't move, signing up to different projects. And I just hope the rollout of it is really focused and it delivers what it's hoping to do. As one final thought, I'm probably coming to the end of my 10 minutes, sorry. As one final thought, I, at the end of last year, was listening to a podcast with Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen called Renegades, and I would definitely advise it. It's very, very good. But in the very last episode, towards the end, they start talking about the climate issue and people. I just wanted to read you a paraphrased quote from Barack Obama from the end. "Our kids, their peer group, across the country, they believe almost as second nature that people are equal. They do not believe in a society that ignores the desecration of the planet. They reject the idea that we have no responsibility at all to future generations when it comes to issues like climate change. So the good news is those are the folks coming up. The question is, can we hold this thing together for long enough? Our job is to help create that bridge for the next generation." And again, that's really interesting. Sophie said that about values and bridges. Sorry, Sarah said that about values and bridges, because it just summed it up. It's like we've planned that before. But I hope that's what we do at Marazion School, and I hope I haven't been too garbled in delivering that to you. But I think we try and bridge that, and we love what we do here, and we think we are trying to set these children up for being those ambassadors of the future. And I feel like my future would be safe in their hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lewis. That was wonderful. To kick off the questions, really, I mean, my big thing really is about those words, aspiration and expectations, really. And I've realised in the last few years that those are almost the central features of what we have to address if we're going to change things, because what is it that people aspire to? It's right that kids have aspirations to have a better life in the future, but what does better mean? And does it necessarily mean having a higher income or higher material consumption? In my own life, I feel like I've gone through 5 decades or so of not terribly high material consumption. It's felt absolutely fine for me. It feels really great. But as it happens, 10 days ago, I went to a school reunion of people who'd left school in 1971. And obviously, for a lot of them, if they'd had the lifestyle that I've had, they would have not thought it was a very good thing somehow. And I'm sure that they would want something different from their children and their grandchildren. So I'm not sure exactly what my question is, but it's something around getting kids fired up, but also giving them the tools to be able to survive in the world where they're expected to have pay mortgages and support their own children as they grow up and all those sorts of things. That's the difficult number to me. Yeah. I'm wondering, obviously your kids at Marazion School are quite young, but yeah, it's a trajectory. Anything to say about that?
I just think you have to offer aspirations and as many different routes as you can. I mean, we live in, you know, a very beautiful place, but yeah, there can be great challenges down here, can't there? You know, with job prospects, many things like that. I think we just need to offer as many aspirations and as many different routes to children as they can, and giving children a voice is so important that they know they can express themselves and they know where to go for help. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that question was probably more directed at Lewis, but I just to add, I completely agree with what you said about giving children a voice, because I think, as you were kind of saying there, Jonathan, everyone's view on what a better world is probably quite different, and that's why it's so important that we bring everyone's voice into the decisions that are being made about our future, especially young people, because it's them who's going to have to live with it for the longest.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Just inviting really people to put questions in the chat or whatever, or put your hand up. So Caroline's got her hand up. Yes.
Caroline, do ask your question.
Did you hear that, Caroline? No? Are you still there, Caroline?
Oh, yes, I'm here.
Oh, yes.
So I was having trouble with my internet. Yeah. So I think my question was for you, Sarah. You were talking about values and bridging, and I was wondering about how you communicate fairness, because in the COVID pandemic, I remember the social scientists saying how important it was in asking people to comply with lockdown, that people perceive that there's fairness, that everybody's contributing, and that if you lose that perception, then people's compliance and motivation could crumble pretty quickly. And I was thinking the same thing does apply to climate change, that people do need to perceive that it's fair and that everybody's going to be doing their bit to change their lifestyles and reduce their consumption. And I know I've read statistics globally that it's something like 1% of the richest people in the world are responsible for 50% of emissions. Now, within countries, I know it's probably not as stark as that, but I'm sure there is something like the richest 10% would still be responsible for maybe 50% of carbon emissions. And so I'm wondering sort of how you address that in your communications, how you motivate people to contribute and reduce their emissions when they know that there's other people who may have second homes, cars, flying, who are causing far more pollution, who aren't contributing. So how do you, how do you target those people with high emissions and so that they take the lead, so that other people will then feel like they're willing to follow? But if you don't target those people with the most emissions, then the maths tells us it's not the most efficient way of meeting targets, and you can lose the commitment of the rest of the population. So it's a difficult question, sorry.
No, it's a really good question and a really important one, because I think at the heart of it, well, as you've said, climate change is, it's rooted in injustice. And, it's the richest countries who are polluting the most, and it's the poorest countries that are suffering the most. So, on a global scale down to a local scale as well, it's people in the kind of maybe cheaper houses or, less well-insulated houses that are going to struggle the most and struggle with rising fuel costs, as well as, you know, the impacts of climate change. So fairness is such an important thing to think about when we're thinking about climate change. And at the moment, a lot of the solutions just aren't affordable for a lot of people. If we think about electric vehicles, you know, although in the longer run, they are cheaper to run because the cost of petrol at the moment is sky high. The initial investment, there's not many people at the moment who would be able to afford that initial investment. And I'd say that that's why at Hope for the Future we believe that political engagement is so important, because change needs to be mandated from the grassroots in a bottom-up approach, but the change needs to come at a political level, so that the most climate conscious decisions are made easier and made more affordable and more fair, so that everyone can benefit from them. So whether that's subsidizing renewables or bringing in energy efficiency grants for homes and that sort of thing, making those more accessible for the poorest households in the UK, it's really important. But also making sure that those big businesses and industries that are emitting the most, making sure they are sort of paying the consequences for that, and are being held accountable to reducing their emissions. So yeah, I don't know if I fully answered your question there, but other than to say, absolutely, fairness is kind of inherent in tackling climate change, and justice and inequality as well. So yeah, I think that's why Parliament and the government have to implement changes at that policy level, to, yeah, as I say, make it easier and more affordable for climate solutions, but also holding those big businesses to account.
Thank you.
Lynn, you had a question.
Unmute. Thank you. Really good talk. I'm really interested in how I'm a child psychiatrist and I work abroad and at home, but I've had it said to me, and I'm interested if you had it said to you, Lewis, that working on the climate issue or the environmental issue with children, and you've seen it in the papers recently, I think, is bad for them. It alarms them, it frightens them, and it's a form of abuse. Now, I have an answer to that, but I'm not interested in my answer. I'm really interested in yours, and see if I can use it. So
yeah, no, that's right. I think it's all about giving them a voice, and I think it's about the way you approach it. I think if you try and teach children anything and you go at it with trying to scare them, it's not the best way to approach it. But if you approach it very neutrally and just saying this is what's happening, you know, I know there can be with children a lot of environmental fear, and a lot of that's driven by the fact that they don't see adults acting in the way that they think they should. Like, you know, in a child's psyche, if there's a problem, you fix it, I think. I think if you just talk about it really neutrally, but, you know, we don't do it as discrete lessons. We try and weave it across everything we do in our topics. So it's kind of just drip fed. So it's there and they know that there's actions. And I think because of the way we do it, and we really encourage them, like I said, to do those school strikes, get involved with Extinction Rebellion, talk about it, they feel like they're part of the solution.
Yeah, and just to say, I completely agree with you. And there's a lot of research, and you probably know it, showing that actually it's the failure of action that is frightening children.
Yeah.
And I've heard young people say it's the not being done that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And engagement and activism, there's masses of psychological research to show.
Yeah, I mean, we try and look at many figures across the board, and, you know, we talk about protected characteristics a lot of people, you know, from all walks of life, but we've spoken about Greta Thunberg for ages, and that's a fantastic role model for them, not only for, you know, disability, but with the fact she's very young and she's such an activist, she's so well known, and, you know, they love talking about her, so that they see changes happening, yeah, because of the role models we introduce them to.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Can I just say, do put your questions in the chat or put your hand up, but I would just like to ask, it seems to me that the sort of the line between Lewis's talk and Sarah's talk is very interesting, and that we've had a talk here in the past from B. Harrison from Teach the Future, who are the young people who have, and Nadia Whittam has helped them, has sponsored them to present a climate emergency education bill, which is quite high. Gavin Williamson would never engage with them. Nadim Zahawi did, but not completely. But this is children who have for themselves identified that this huge gap in action, which is causing so much anxiety. And but it strikes me that these children, as they, when they become 18, a lot of these children will be voting. And you would think, and I'm not sure whether I'm asking Lewis or Sarah this question, but maybe you can both answer, that the current government or any sort of climate denying politician would be a bit worried about this. So Sarah, should we start with you and then maybe Lewis?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. And I think that's why it's also important for people to start young with their political engagement. And we have a schools project where we go into schools and Lewis, maybe I should talk to you about this later, but we go into schools and deliver workshops on climate change and speaking to politicians, and then we usually invite the MP to come in and speak to the students. And I think it's really important to be doing that, because young people are citizens, and just because they can't vote yet doesn't mean that they don't have the right to have a say, and they should be able to speak to their politicians and share their views before they reach that voting age. So I think showing them that they have agency and that they have a voice, and that they can be speaking to decision makers is incredibly important, and it helps to show politicians that this is what young people, this is what they care about, this is what they're going to have in their minds when they do reach that voting age. And as you say, Pippa, they need to really take that really seriously and really be thinking about it.
Lewis, do you have a comment on that one?
Yeah, just Pippa, I very much agree. I think children are much more clued up now than they have ever been. They, with access to the internet, and they can do their own research. If they're passionate about something and they know how to access it, they can find out their own stuff. And I think, yeah, as with them being so much more savvy in years to come, I do think it could change the political landscape for if parties aren't looking at issues that concern them.
Right, thank you.
Caroline, you've got your hand up again.
Yes, so it's a simple question this time, I think, maybe for Sarah, and I wondered whether actually Beth might like to contribute to this. When we're writing to our politicians, should we be writing long letters full of facts and figures and very well-reasoned arguments, or should we be writing short, simple letters that are just heartfelt and expressing our anxieties and concerns? And kind of what happens to those letters? Are they actually kind of taken, because politicians get so many, are they actually kind of taken as a straw poll? So for example, Derek might think, oh, well, I've had 20 emails on that issue, 10 on that, but nobody's contacted me on that. Or does it go deeper? Are the letters really read? Would they ever, really sort of change a politician's minds, or are we, is it more just a kind of local straw poll?
Maybe Beth would like to say something on that.
Well, I was going to say maybe I could tell you what we tell people, and then Beth from her personal experience can either back it up or otherwise. But yes, I mean, we would absolutely say the personalised letters are the most effective at getting through to your MP. And we've had kind of anecdotes from MPs saying that they've received letters in the past that still say, dear, insert MP's name here. And it's like, how is that going to catch the attention of an MP? And that, you know, MPs are there to represent their constituents at the end of the day, so they're really keen to hear the views and the thoughts and the beliefs of their constituents. So getting kind of mass campaign emails or emails just full of facts and figures isn't really telling them what their constituents care about. So yeah, we would always say go for the personalized, tailor it, show that you've kind of put time and thought and effort into it, so that your MP can see that as one of their constituents, you truly do care about this issue. You've not just kind of copied, pasted and clicked send. But yeah, as I say, I'll let Beth say whether that's her view on it as well.
So just so that if anyone doesn't know, I'm in Derek's office in London, so I actually do sit on the other side of, so it's been such an interesting experience actually, having previously written to my own MP about issues and then sitting on the other side and seeing so when I first started working for Derek, honestly I was amazed at how much information and the number of emails and the amount of contact that he would get. And I know from speaking to other staff, MP staff for other MPs, that it's the same. The volume is incredible. And so I think, as Sarah's been saying, it would, in an ideal world, every email would cut through, but that just is impossible. And I think that the personal, and I actually also personally would add to that, I don't need to repeat what Sarah says, because I do completely agree that the personal is what cuts through, because MPs are, I believe, by and large in their roles because they actually care about their constituents and they want to represent them well. And so, especially if you've already got a relationship with somebody and you've already, perhaps even if you can meet face to face, so go to a surgery, go to an event that you know they're going to be at, perhaps invite them to an event that you're hosting or something like that, to actually meet them and kind of humanize each other. I think, you know, political debate can be so unhelpful, but ultimately we're all human beings, and I think that's by dignifying them with like asking, you know, getting to know them a little bit and then allowing them to do the same for you. Even then, after that, I think if you send any emails or any letters, are more likely to cut through then as well, because there's that, oh, I recognise the name of that person, or their staff might recognise, and I just think anything like that helps, because it just there's a lot of noise, and I think that's just, you've got to embrace the reality of that. I also personally think that any if you can add any actions to your communication, and this isn't just political, I think you know, anyone that you want to be contacting, not just saying you know, because the reality is if you ask Derek to solve climate education policy, he's not the education minister, he's not a junior minister, he's not got the portfolio for that. He can't just make that decision, as much as he would like to, might like to. That's not realistic. And so what you can do is find out about other actions, and I'm sure hope for the future do like education on this or other things. But for example, like MPs can ask questions, or written questions especially, to ministers to say, what are you doing on education policy, to try and put it on their agenda and that kind of thing. I think anything practically, can you come to this event that we're doing? You know, can you write this question? Would you mind sending a letter to a minister on my behalf? Making it as practical as possible and as personal as possible, I think it's much more to cut through the noise. And then not expecting an MP to solve the climate crisis, because that's just not realistic. And it doesn't mean the heart isn't there or the desire isn't there. It's just that's not real life.
Thank you. Something I wanted to ask or say about education, really, to the two speakers, is to do with whether it's as useful to focus on resource depletion as climate change. In the kind of decades that I've been involved in all this stuff, it feels like we've been through waves of, sometimes we're talking about things running out, sometimes we're talking about pollution, you know, climate emergencies and those sorts of things. And the solutions are the same for both those things, the answers to those problems, but they're different kind of ideas of what the problem is. And I somehow suspect that resource depletion is more understandable to more people than pollution and climate change, because I think people think, oh, the earth is big, it'll cope with whatever we can throw at it, kind of thing. I was very fascinated some years ago to read an article about climate change campaigners in the USA, and one of them was a member of the Republican Party and also a member of the Tea Party. And she said, actually, she pushed the whole thing of resource depletion much more to her kind of right-wing followers because they understood it better. And I mention this in the, you know, in the current context, really, where there's this cost of living crisis, so-called cost of living crisis going on. Well, to me, that is to do with resource depletion. Yeah, it's triggered by the war in Ukraine or whatever, but that's the basic thing that underlies it. And you know, we've on the one hand, we've got Extinction Rebellion saying about fossil fuels, leave them in the ground, and now we've got a restricted supply of fossil fuels because Russia is turning off the tap on their pipeline, and governments are rushing in to kind of make it all okay for people. Oh, you can carry on. We'll you know, the price of oil and gas has gone up, but we'll give you a subsidy so you can carry on using it. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but I don't know whether Lewis or Sarah would like to say anything about that other side of the coin.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in briefly. I think, you know, from my position as a teacher, I think your internet broke up a little bit there. I don't know if it was me or you, so I missed some of that. But giving a broad diet, so I think drip feeding sort of everything, and just giving them a base. Like that Super Learning Day we just recently had, we had BIFA come in actually to begin with, and talking about reduce, reuse and recycle. And one of the key messages they were pushing was about plastic, and plastic comes from oil. We only have a finite amount of oil. So if we keep using plastic at the rate we are, not recycling, where are we going to get it from? So I think, yeah, I mean, obviously we've got a whole curriculum to teach as well. So we're not just doing, so yeah, that would be my response to that. I think drip feeding and across everything.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, you were saying about how it, you know, kind of it's changed over the years, and I think it's probably to do with what is happening at the time, but also who you're speaking to. But I think at the moment, as you say, with the Russian war and food security and energy security, as well as the cost of living crisis, all being such kind of salient issues at the moment, that is something to be talking about right now, because that is something that is affecting people's day-to-day lives, and actually solutions to the climate crisis, they overlap so much, but they actually make more sense. Like you know, if I think in the UK some people have been talking about, you know, getting more oil and gas here, like locally. Well, renewables are cheaper and they have a much quicker turnaround, so it actually makes no sense to be doing anything else. So yeah, I think it's about kind of tailoring your communication, like your example about the lady who is in the Tea Party and the Republican Party, who are you speaking to and what message resonates better with them, whether that is resource depletion or climate justice, for example, or they would probably speak to quite different people. Carbon tax and dividend is something that's been shown to resonate much better with more right-wing audiences, whereas it would be the kind of inequality and justice angle that works better with more left-wing people. So yeah, tailoring your message, thinking about the who you're speaking to, but also, yeah, what is the most kind of pertinent issue of the time.
Thank you.
Well, do we have any more questions? Well, we seem to be just about on time, so a huge thank you to our speakers. I think that was just such a great discussion. I'm really sorry there weren't more of us here, but this summer. But so we're not having a meeting in August. In September, I think, Beth, we're going to be talking about green energy for low-income households, and specifically about the Heat the Streets Scythians. So let's hope you will all join us for that. Has John Johnson gone?
No, I haven't gone.
Do you want to wind this up, John?
Oh, yes. Well, yes, thank you very, very much for those of you who have been here. And thank you to Lewis and Sarah.
Yes, thank you.
A real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great talks. And thanks, Beth, for setting it all up. So
yeah.
See you in September.
Bye.
See you soon.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.